just the sheer number of EVs that are scheduled to release this year and next. So in here in the US, the market is primarily crossover focused, which is very different from India, where the segment leaders tend to be hatchbacks. I guess the B1, C1 segment sedan, the segment classes
Yeah.
for automotives back in India. Uh, the what has suddenly pushed the EV back into focus is the high gas prices here, or the high petrol prices here in the US.
And that's the same here.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's the same here. I mean, over the past couple of days, it's just been like increasing every day. And it's
yeah. What is it
funny
where you
enough,
are right
there's a
now?
lot of
How
it's
much?
108. I just filled up for 108 per
Wow,
liter. So I don't know
wow.
what that
Okay.
converts into.
Yeah, in gallons and dollars. The last time I filled up here in the Chicago suburb area, I paid roughly 4.3 or 4.4
And
dollars
some
per
of
gallon.
this, I mean,
Yeah.
some of this is because of the current situation in Russia,
Oh yeah,
Ukraine, all of
yeah.
that stuff,
100%,
right? So
100%.
some of this is because of that. But in India, it's been happening for over the past 2 or 3 years, where
Yep.
just before COVID, or even just at the start of COVID, I still remember I topped up at 78 for a
Yeah.
liter. So that's
Yeah.
30 rupees
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
over
100%.
as it stands today, right? So for a liter.
Yeah.
So that's taking a big hit on all of the sectors, including pricing for deliveries, all your logistics services. Everything is just shot up because that's what the country is going to have to run on.
Yep.
And coming back to the whole EV thing, that's exactly why the entire um, market is shifting towards EVs, and there is government backing and subsidies for
Yep.
EV purchases as well, right?
Yep.
So the entire ecosystem is very much pushing towards that change.
Mm-hmm.
It's just about the adoption levels
Yep.
and the feasibility when it
Yep.
comes down to things, right? So
100%. Yep.
let's start with charging stations, right? So there aren't that many charging stations. Even in T1 cities, there are nearly not enough charging stations if people were to start buying up EVs. Now,
Yep.
I know in the most recent news article that I read about it is they're expecting to see at least a 10% of all the purchases
Mm-hmm.
of consumer oriented vehicles to be EVs by 2030.
I see.
So that's 10%, right? So I mean, in perspective, that seems like a very small number, but
Mm-hmm.
you got to think about how large India is and what the infrastructure that needs to go behind it. And we're not talking about too far away into the future. We're talking about 6-7 years,
Yep.
and that kind of infrastructure in that short time, that's going to be a lot of work.
Yeah.
And I know there's a lot of the Indian companies or automotive companies really are making huge investments and huge bets on EVs being the next big thing.
Yep.
The challenges aside, there are some decent offerings from Indian manufacturers now.
Yes.
Range anxiety is going to be a thing,
Oh yes.
but I don't think people are buying EVs in India right now.
Mm-hmm.
Who the people aren't the same people who need to do long drives, right? So they're
Oh yeah.
city
100%.
commuters,
100%.
or
Yes.
they're sticking to their same kind of zone.
Yep.
So those kind of folks who have that disposable income to try out something
Mm-hmm.
new, right? To experiment,
Yep.
they're doing it, right? I've been seeing a lot of EVs locally as well, so it's
Yeah.
it's great to see that. And definitely the market is highly dominated by two-wheelers as well, right? So
Yeah.
all your motorcycles, your scooters, your mopeds, whatever else. And there's a lot of movement and a lot of traction there as well. Is
Mm-hmm.
uh, Ola, which is your Uber competition here in India.
Yes.
For people who don't know that, it's pretty large, so you might have come across it, but it's basically India's homegrown Uber, right?
Correct.
I'm sure they're not happy about me phrasing it that way, but just for people understanding it. So
Yep.
that's the scale of things, right? So they've just released and started deliveries of their first electric scooter. And this has been hyped so much that people have even talked about it. I saw a few tweets which referred to it as the Tesla of India, right? And granted, the CEO of Ola wasn't too happy about that. But
Okay,
yeah, I mean, they're the Ola of the world. That's what the response I believe was, right? So they're
I
not the
see.
Tesla of India, they're more of the Ola of the world, right?
I
So
see.
it is what it is. Call it as you may, but there is growth potential there, especially in the you know um, small commute space.
Yep.
Micromobility is another huge area of expansion in
Hmm.
T1 cities.
Okay.
The last mile, because a lot of the T1 cities have very high density of people and a lot of things happening within the same area. So
Hmm.
that last mile and that within zone kind of transit is really working out. So your Uber Eats equivalents, your Swiggies, your Zomatos, all these folks in Bangalore and T1 cities such as that is they're just ditching their scooters. They're not using their personal scooters anymore. They're just
Mm,
operating out of one area using the rideshare services within that area, right? So they
interesting.
just pick up a scooter and then just deliver it through that area. So it's a
Interesting.
lot more economical from their perspective as well, which is like at 108 rupees a liter, it's not really gonna break even at until you make a few deliveries and take your cut while the operator keeps theirs.
I
It's
see.
going to take a while for you to make up your margins.
I see. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I think that's the main sort of difference that people need to know between the sort of the US EV market versus the Indian EV market. Indian EV market, is primarily in for cars. It's been dominated by Tata's Nexon EV. But I think in terms of sheer volume and feasibility, um, it's the two-wheeler market that is probably going to be a lot more.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I
Um,
mean, they've had the Hyundai Kona here for a while, right? Not
mhm.
in large volumes. These were just import cars. They weren't manufactured here.
Mhm.
Some people did buy them.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's really a lifestyles thing at some point. The other day I
Yes.
saw a Prius, and that's
That's it.
like
That's
that's
really interesting.
super rare.
Yeah, but
That's super
also,
rare here.
you basically segued into something that I wanted to ask about, which was why aren't hybrids a bigger thing in
Yeah, it got
India?
skipped over entirely, right? The PHEVs completely skipped over.
Yeah,
I don't get it.
yeah. So plug-in hybrids. So if I remember, Team BHP, the automotive enthusiast website, when they were
Yeah,
talking about the Toyota Wellfire, which is the Toyota
yeah,
luxury MPV, which is also hybrid. And Toyota does this. Every Toyota and Lexus vehicles that are sold in India that are coming in as CBU units, completely built up units, typically have uh, hybrid
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 powertrains. Yeah.
powertrains. Yeah, and Toyota's
And they
generally
had
been.
those in the I mean, they had those in the Camry for the longest time, right? That's why Camry
Yes,
was so overpriced, even
yes.
compared to the Accord. Like when the
Com-
Accord and the Camry were being sold side by side here,
yep.
um, it wasn't really a choose either or situation because the plug-in
Yeah.
hybrids were much, much more expensive.
Yeah. And so as far as I know, it kind of boils down to this sort of like face off between manufacturers and the government when it comes to subsidies. Or, I'm sure Toyota was trying their best to lobby the government in terms of like, let us reduce the import duties on hybrid powertrains or hybrid vehicles that come in. But I guess the government also has a responsibility of like protecting the interests of the Indian manufacturers at the same time, because if you artificially deflate the price of a hybrid compared to Indian ICE offerings, ICE or even EV offerings, um, that's an unfair advantage to one specific manufacturer, especially when it comes to the leader in the segment, which is Toyota. So
That's true.
I think that essentially boils down to it. But it's a shame because hybrid plug-in hybrid vehicles essentially can give you the best of both worlds in terms of
That's
like
true. I mean,
getting you that
I
fabulous mileage, solving your range anxiety problem if you do need to make longer trips. But it's that insane cost of entry which is keeping it away from Indian consumers, and it's kind of sad that that's the situation. Also, it could be argued that it's also a problem of sort of like manufacturers having exclusivity when it comes to technologies? Because Toyota is the leader in the space when it comes to hybrids, right? Just because of the amount of years that the Prius has been on road in more
I mean,
developed
they
countries.
have Suzuki has their mild hybrids, right? So
Okay.
they've been selling those as well for a while here, but it's very, very, you know, it's not worth it, right? So
Mm.
I mean, they're not charging a premium for it for what it's worth,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That's like the Suzuki, they have their Ciaz, right? So that's always been offered with a mild hybrid system. It
Interesting.
doesn't
Okay.
do much. It makes a slight impact on
Oh, it's just
your
a
MPGs.
regenerative. Yeah. So like the first
Yeah, yeah, it's a
generation
very small system.
non-plugging, non-pluggable, non-battery
Yeah, yeah,
hybrid
it's
system.
not a
Yeah.
plug-in. It's not a
Okay. Okay.
plug-in. It's
I
just
see.
yeah,
So just
yeah,
regenerative power, I guess. Yeah. Okay. I see.
exactly.
Yeah. I mean, at some point, if you're like at,
Interestingly,
yeah, go ahead.
speaking of Suzuki, Suzuki Japan has just pumped in over $1 billion into a new manufacturing plant in India, just specifically dedicated to their EV lineup.
Interesting.
So we should be
Interesting.
seeing a lot of traction there. And Suzuki is a home brand of India,
Of
and
course.
then
Of course.
everybody has a soft spot for Suzuki, and that's
Yeah.
that's what you see most of your runarounds in.
Oh, absolutely.
Um,
For those who are watching the video podcast, I'm just putting up the sales figures from
there you
February
go.
2022, as reported by Team PHP for India, and the sales is insane, right? The top five, four of the top five vehicles that were sold last month are Maruti, which is the Suzuki arm, technically
Indian
all in
operator, right?
Indian operator
Yeah.
of Suzuki models, or they have a technology joint venture with which is what are essentially modified and heavily modified Suzuki designs in India. Um,
Yeah, I mean,
and
a lot of their cars are like straight, the exact copy of what they would offer in outside markets, but they
yep,
would be detuned or given a smaller engine just because of the fuel economy and stuff.
yep,
So,
100%.
yeah, I mean, that point exactly, right? So, being the biggest household brand in terms of automotive, right?
Yep.
That puts you in a position of being responsible
Hmm.
and also being, or at least trying to be competitive in the market, right?
Yeah, I guess
So
they're also yeah. Go ahead.
you have all your small car or budget car purchases.
Yep.
Those are the first people who you need to target, because once those people start buying into the whole EV kind of ecosystem,
Hmm.
you're going to make much bigger number of sales, right? So, and with that comes in all the investment opportunity for your charging network and everything that goes around that as well.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, and for the Nexon EV, it seems like it's a bigger vertical for Tata, right? Because they are also heavily investing into
Yeah,
the charging. Because Tata owns Tata
network. Yeah,
Power as
exactly,
well, right? So they have an incentive
exactly, exactly.
to provide,
So
essentially.
Tata's doing that whole thing where they're building their own, like they're rebranding entirely, right? So
Mhm.
the Tata that was around not even a couple of years ago is not the Tata we see today, right? So
Oh
they've
yeah,
done a complete revamp of their brand, right?
100%.
Besides
Yeah.
their name, they've done a whole upside down, right? The quality, the build quality, the deliverables, their reliability, the entire quality of the product that they're offering right now is on a whole new level. That's
Hmm.
completely new. I mean, to be fair, it's still a ways to go before they reach up to the even the Korean manufacturers, right?
Oh
Just in
yeah.
terms of plastics and stuff.
Oh,
But
100%. Yeah.
the attempt they've made at refining their product is commendable, right? It's great, and the price point and their marketing push for buying Indian products, right? So consumers really go for that, and
Hmm.
Tata's in the same boat as Mahindra over there. Mahindra obviously has a few models only on offer. Tata has a whole big lineup of products. Right? They have like 5 SUVs now. They've even got a little mini SUV called the Punch. It's uh, it's barely an SUV, right?
Yep.
It's a
Yep.
little hatchback on stilts. That's what it is. But it counts as an SUV here, right? So that's what the market wants. The
Yep.
market
Yep.
wants that, and they've delivered. And
Interesting.
all of these vehicles are getting EV platforms as well. As far as I know, they've just moved into the Tata Ultras, which you earlier mentioned, right? The Indian mass market segment is hatchbacks. So
Yep.
that's your hatchback solution. So that's I mean, that's a really good offering. And although I haven't seen many on the road, they've just started that a few months ago.
Mhm.
I think that's going to really pick up.
Yep. And what's actually kind of interesting is, I guess it's sort of similar in the US, but EV adoption is a lot easier for um, non-city people, right? So technically, people who have their own house and have a
Yeah,
garage. So
absolutely.
so it's going to be really interesting to see this. So tier one, tier two cities where most people are housed in apartments, their charging solution is essentially a big question mark unless they can get their housing society, the Indian equivalent of an HOA, to agree on some way to
Yeah.
get some sort of parking, some charging solution. Contrast that with our
I
experiences
think
in
I think
Kerala,
so.
right?
There's I mean, yeah, even in Kerala, if like living in an apartment, it's not going to work out, right?
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
like you said, the housing association could say a lot about it.
yeah.
So there is, however, a lot of opportunity there for newer brands to start up and
Hmm.
build charging stations and
Yep.
just offer that as a product line, right?
Yep.
We build charging stations for your housing association, and
Yeah.
there's tons of those around.
Yeah.
That's a business on its own. If you
Yeah.
if you want to
Obviously.
get into that and you have the kind of right approach for it, it can be done.
Yep. It can be an additional revenue stream to
They
the
just
housing
they
association as well, right? Like
well,
there can be
yeah,
some.
it
Yeah.
could work out like the whole ATM
Yeah.
system,
Yeah.
right? So
Exactly. Exactly.
yeah, it could work out like that.
Yeah, no, but my point being, like, in semi-urbanized environments like Kerala, especially with certain segments of consumers, like self-employed professionals, like doctors and lawyers and things like that. This comes from like an anecdotal experience with my father's neighbor, who is a cardiologist based in Kerala in Calicut. Uh, he just switched over to the Nexon EV, and that's essentially because he lives in a house with a garage, right? Like with a car porch. Um, and the fact
Yeah,
that you can, when you buy one of these vehicles from Tata, they'll come and set up that home charging solution for you. But what's even more interesting is that I've seen videos and reports of people who are running EVs, basically running EVs with a combination of the EV plus solar. So if you own your own house, then you have that roof real estate to establish like a solar platform, and some of the incentives that the power companies are giving. It is an upfront investment, obviously, and it is targets a very specific segment of your, um,
exactly.
you
I
know,
mean,
it's not
uh,
it's not
I mean
scalable in
this
that
this was a
sense.
thing.
Yeah,
Exactly. I mean,
yeah,
this was a thing, right? So
yeah.
this was a thing. It was, um, you know, a lot of people have thought about it, and some people have done it, and they've
Hmm.
been made famous because of their ideas and everything. That's good. But again, when it comes to scalability, it's
Yeah.
not really changing the ecosystem. That's one person's story,
Yes,
right?
exactly. Yeah.
And the solar grids back to the power supply company. It's not something that everybody can do,
Yep.
right?
Yep. There
Honestly,
is.
who's going to sit and monitor that? And
Yeah.
it's expensive to set up a solar grid. It's a
Yeah. It
one-time
is.
investment, sure,
It
but the
is.
EV
Yeah.
itself is coming in at a high cost.
Yep.